Breakfast at a small diner. The elderly waitress sets down a coffee cup, her left hand trembling slightly. A large burn scar visible from her neck down to her cheek. Nobody says anything, until a young customer makes a cruel comment. Nobody defends her. Nobody looks up. She turns away. 10 minutes later, a black SUV slides into the parking lot. A soldier in full uniform walks in, without saying a word. He just stands at attention, staring directly at the person who insulted her. That's my mother. If this moved you, subscribe. Tomorrow's story goes even deeper. Elaine, 64 years old, Iraq War veteran turned waitress at County Grill. The scar from an explosion had stolen her confidence for years. That morning, Elaine served a table of 4 young people in their early 20s. While placing coffee cups, one of them spoke up. "You're getting too close to customers. Look at that scar. Disgusting. You should wear a mask." Elaine froze, apologized, retreated to the kitchen, silent. Many people heard it, but nobody said anything. The shift manager saw it happen, but pretended not to notice. She sat in the back room, wiping her hands, breathing deeply, letting the hurt wash over her. This wasn't the first time, but it never got easier. Elaine remembered when she first came home from Iraq. The doctors said she was lucky to be alive. The explosion that left her scarred also saved 3 soldiers' lives when she pulled them from the burning vehicle. Back then, people called her a hero. Now, serving coffee and eggs at minimum wage, she was just damaged goods. The young customers continued their conversation, laughing loudly about weekend plans, completely unbothered by the pain they'd just caused. An older gentleman at the corner table glanced over, his jaw tightening. But he said nothing. A mother with her young daughter whispered, "Don't stare, honey. Just eat your pancakes." Elaine heard it all. Every whisper. Every awkward silence. Every moment of judgment. She'd traded her uniform for an apron, her medals for minimum wage, her respect for this. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd spent 20 years protecting people's freedom to speak their minds, even when those minds chose cruelty over kindness, even when those words cut deeper than any shrapnel ever could. In the kitchen, Elaine caught her reflection in the steel surface of the refrigerator. The scar ran from her left ear down to her collarbone, a permanent reminder of the worst and best day of her life. Worst, because of the pain. Best, because 3 families still had their sons because of what she did that day. But the young customer didn't know that story, didn't care to know. To them, she was just a scarred waitress who made them uncomfortable. Elaine straightened her shoulders, picked up the coffee pot, and walked back out. She had bills to pay. Pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. But deep inside, something was breaking, and she wasn't sure how many more breaks she could take. After the insult, the group of young customers continued talking badly about Elaine, using their phones to secretly record her and giggling mockingly. A customer at the next table tried to look, but then looked down, remaining silent. Elaine tried to continue her work, eyes red, but still pouring water and carrying food as if nothing had happened. A little girl sitting with her mother quietly asked, "Mommy, what happened to that lady's face?" The mother pulled the child's hand down, whispering, "Don't look. Keep eating." Elaine heard it. She bowed her head, smiled sadly, and walked to the dishwashing area. The shift supervisor that day, Luke, clearly saw what happened but said, "Customer is king. Just bear with it a little." Elaine didn't argue back. She just nodded lightly and continued working. In her heart, memories flooded back. The time she served on the battlefield, rescuing people from fires, the time she was injured which cost her part of the skin on her face. But never before had she felt as humiliated as today. The people she once trusted, the community she once protected, this was where she felt most lost. The young man who had insulted her pulled out his phone again, this time taking a photo. "Guys, check this out," he whispered to his friends. "Horror movie material right here." His friends erupted in quiet laughter, trying to muffle their giggles behind their hands. The sound reached every corner of the small diner, the kind of laughter that makes your stomach turn, the kind that strips away dignity one chuckle at a time. An elderly veteran sitting alone in the back booth recognized something in Elaine's posture, the way she held her shoulders, the precise way she moved. Military training never really leaves you. He wanted to say something, should have said something, but the words stuck in his throat like concrete. Luke, the shift manager, was more concerned about the table's bill than his employees' dignity. $22.50. That's what Elaine's humiliation was worth to him. "Just smile and bear it," he had told her. "They're paying customers." As if cruelty became acceptable when accompanied by a credit card, Elaine retreated to the small break room behind the kitchen. 5 minutes. That's all she asked for. 5 minutes to collect the pieces of herself scattered across the diner floor. She sat on a plastic chair, closed her eyes, and tried to remember who she used to be. Staff Sergeant Elaine Morrison, Bronze Star recipient, holder of 2 Purple Hearts, a woman who had stared down enemy fire without flinching. But somehow, cruel words from a stranger hurt more than any bullet ever could. The wind blew gently outside, but inside her heart, there was a storm. And then she asked for 5 minutes off, stepped out the back door, sat down on a plastic chair, eyes closed, as if wanting to forget everything. Right at that moment, the diner door swung open. A young soldier in crisp uniform walked in. The black SUV was still parked outside. This was Michael, Elaine's only son, just back from deployment at Fort Bragg. He didn't need to ask questions. Just by looking at his mother's face, he understood what had happened. The atmosphere in the diner became tense. The young people at that table suddenly fell silent. Michael walked straight to the center of the diner, his eyes locked onto the person who had just insulted his mother. "That woman is my mother, and she's also a veteran. If you've never worn a uniform, please don't open your mouth to judge the scars she carries." The entire diner fell dead silent. An older man in the corner stood up, placed his hand over his heart, and nodded. Elaine stepped out from the back, her face still wet with tears. She never expected her son to appear at exactly the right moment. The diner manager, flustered and confused, stepped forward. I'm sorry, Miss Elaine, I didn't know." Michael replied coldly, "You knew, but you chose to stay silent." The young customer who had made the cruel comment tried to shrink into his seat. His bravado had evaporated the moment a man in uniform entered the room. I was just," he stammered. "Just what?" Michael's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Just showing everyone what kind of person you really are?" Michael turned to address the entire diner, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had seen real courage. "This woman pulled 3 soldiers from a burning vehicle in Fallujah. She took shrapnel to the face, saving lives. While you were probably in high school complaining about homework, she was bleeding in the desert so you could sit here and drink your overpriced coffee in freedom." An elderly customer in the diner slowly began to clap. Then a second person. And a third. Within moments, the entire diner stood up in unison, like a collective apology, like a forgiveness that didn't need words. The young man who had insulted Elaine looked around desperately, realizing he was now the center of attention for all the wrong reasons. His friends had distanced themselves, suddenly very interested in their phones. "Ma'am," he said quietly, his voice barely audible. I'm sorry. I didn't know." Michael stepped closer. "You didn't need to know her story to treat her with basic human respect. But now you do know. What are you going to do with that knowledge?" Elaine was no longer crying, but her eyes shone with pride, pain, and gratitude all at once. She had spent 3 years serving coffee to people who saw only her scars. Today, for the first time, someone saw her service. Michael took his mother's hand. "Come on, Mom. I'm home now. Nobody has the right to make you bow your head anymore." The mother and son left the diner. Tables were still there, customers hadn't finished their meals. But nothing would ever be the same. Silence enveloped everything. A heavy silence, but full of awakening. The young customer sat there, staring at his untouched breakfast, finally understanding the weight of words. 1 week later, in front of County Grill, people erected a large photo of Elaine. In uniform, young, smiling brightly beside her old comrades. Below it was a line of text: "The woman with the scar, and a heart that never retreated." Michael returned to base. But that day, as he stepped out of the SUV, he received dozens of messages from strangers. "Your mother is a hero. We're sorry for staying silent." In the diner, the customer who had insulted her quietly returned. The young man left a note on the table. "I was wrong. That scar. Now I see it's more beautiful than any face I've ever seen." No dialogue needed. Actions spoke everything. Luke, the shift manager, was quietly transferred to another location. The diner's new policy was simple: respect for all customers and employees. No exceptions. The elderly veteran who had remained silent that day started volunteering at the local VA hospital. He never spoke about what he witnessed, but his actions spoke louder than any apology. Because there are people who never demand to be thanked, but we owe them an entire lifetime of respect. The black SUV never returned to County Grill, but its impact remained forever. Some scars tell stories of sacrifice, others tell stories of survival. Elaine's told both. And now, finally, people were listening. Subscribe to Dignity Stories if you believe that kindness and honor deserve to be protected to the very end.